Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I really am delighted to be back with Patrick McGilp and John Hughes. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. John, you were just saying you were doing fine without me. I could drop out.
Well, I was doing fine without you until now, when obviously I've been kidnapped, and I'm just, I'd like to ask people if they could raise funds for my release. The lighting in this is not the best, to be fair.
I actually thought that you had a bit of colour about you there, John. I thought you were
I have
catching a
loads
few
of colours.
rays.
Yeah, I was out on the beach the last couple of nights. It's been glorious down here, absolutely glorious. So
I'm
I
glad
am
to hear
quite
it.
sunburnt, but in saying that, I'm surprised you can see any colours other than black and white in this thing. I've got lamps tilted towards me and everything. A
Listen,
mess.
we'll get through it. It's all positive today because it's match day. Patrick McGilp, it's the Champions League, of course. And the first thing I want to do is start off by the kind of positivity and the confidence that I sensed from Brendan Rodgers' pre-match press conference yesterday. He says we're ready. I do get the sense, although I did feel pretty ready to go into the second campaign under Ange, I feel as though we're as ready as we have been in a good few years going into a Champions League campaign.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It does feel like not quite now or never, because I'd fancy us to qualify again next year, but we might not have the same luck of the draw. But we are in an exceptionally good place. In terms of money, we've never had more money. In terms of players, I think we're as good as we have been since the Seville team of 2003. I think this team's right up there with the Invincible season and Ange's side over those 2 years. And looking at this game, I think we're 1-4 with the bookies. We're miles ahead in terms of money, squad, coefficient points. I think this is their first Champions League campaign, Slovan Bratislava. We're at home. We're in really good form. The fans are in a really good mood. So it's a chance. I think it's our 13th attempt at winning our first match day in the Champions League sort of group phase, league phase. So we can hopefully put that behind us and. We do need to make a really good start tonight because with the 4 games, obviously 4 match package, £184. It feels as if now's the time to kick on. We've got a good squad, a great manager, and we've got a new format that will hopefully benefit us, and we can get ourselves into that playoff position come the end of January. So looking for a win tonight, hopefully a comfortable win, but any win will do, and hopefully we can make a good start to our European campaign.
Did you say this was the 13th opener? Have we failed to get anything from 10 of them? Is that right? Have we lost the 10 times, I think, going into groups?
I know we've never won a game, but I don't know
mhm.
about draws and stuff. But
We would have won one, I think, because we would have had Rosenborg, but it was delayed because of COVID. Wasn't it no fly?
Yeah.
But we did beat them eventually. But yeah, I don't know. How are you feeling about it, Paul John? You're optimistic, are you?
Well, I'm pretty optimistic, John, in so far as, you look at the start of the season, and I think that we've got a momentum and a bit of a bounce. There is a confidence in the side. We're talking about who's the best midfield to play rather than, try to cobble together the side. So I think that's been really refreshing tonight, and it's going to be a big discussion point today. Yeah. Going into this game, and also looking at some of the results yesterday, I'm thinking to myself that it's doable to get into that. It's not quite a middle section, but the 9 to 24 to get the playoff, to get the 9th and the 10th games in Europe. I want to tie all this in, not being negative. I want to tie all this into the chairman's statement in the report to talk about ambitions, aspirations. Am I reading too much into some of the wording of that? But yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident, John. How about yourself?
Well, I've been feeling pretty confident all the way up to this until today, where I have convinced myself this morning that they're actually Barcelona in disguise, and that we're going to struggle. And I just, it's that coming up to match time on the day is just, I tend to get quite sort of anxious with all the possibilities. You think of all the analysis you've heard, how good they are, how good we think we are relative, but that's relative to our league. They're relative to their league. How much do we really know about it? Apparently they've got a very experienced side, and they're good on the right and we're weak on the left, and all this sort of stuff. So you just start to convince yourself that we could be in a lot of trouble. But I think it's just, as we always try and do on here anyway, is try and remain balanced about it. In terms of, but I think we have a very good chance, but that's as balanced about it as we can get, because the reality is we must win this game. If we're going to have any chance at all, we must win this game. The bad news is that I was looking at their group. Now, I don't know if you've actually seen their group, but it's a nightmare of a group. So, I mean, they have Man City, Girona, Dinamo Zagreb, Milan, and Atletico Madrid. So we are, apart from Zagreb, I think we are the only team they could reasonably expect to take anything from and not get pummeled. So they're going to be giving this their all. As you say, it's the first, they haven't had a team in the Champions League for 12 years. It's their first time in it in this format. We did obviously have to get this in there, just a bit of humble brag. But we did play them in 1964 in the European Cup Winners' Cup quarter final, and the winner was scored by someone who is related to me, as a matter of fact. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before. So the old man scored that. We actually held out, and it was considered to be a great victory at the time. And Bobby Murdoch had scored a penalty in the first leg, and we were holding on for dear life in the second leg, and we scored in the last 5 minutes. And that led us to the infamous semi-final against MTK Budapest. We were 3-0 up in the first leg. And basically the chairman was for giving people a rest, and and Bob Kelly was, is there any point, and the rest of it, and we lost 4-3. So yeah, anyway, that's just a slight diversion. Got to get that story in there. And so it's been it's an interesting morning. I started the morning very happy, but then when I'm coming onto this, I listen to a lot of the analysis, and that's really, really dampened my fervour, to put it mildly.
John, I think it's good to have a wee bit of a look back on the historical element of this game, because, as you quite rightly say, our first ever real run in Europe, not the first time we appeared in Europe when we got to the semi-finals, was of course that season that you referred to, 63-64, and we came up against Slovan Bratislava, as you quite rightly said, your old fella scoring the winning goal on the 4th of March 1964. Interesting enough, the home leg for Celtic, which we also won 1-0, a certain Joseph Venglos was dropped for Slovan Bratislava that night. So he was dropped for Alexander Horvath. And they had a player in their team, John, by the name of Moravchik. And I often wonder, is he related to the great Lubo? What was his first name? Anton. Wait a minute, Anton Moravchik. How did that come about?
I am pretty sure that's his dad. I think I thought you had this discussion before. I'm pretty sure that's his father.
That's his old man. That is sensational. But you're right. That was a great foray into, but ultimately a very disappointing outcome to a really good run in Europe. It's the same team we're playing tonight. And as you say, John, they might be looking at us and thinking this is the opportunity for us to get some points on the board as well. Confidence is great, Patrick. And I think we are looking confident as a team, as a unit, and with really good options on the bench. But that leads us to the midfield. It leads us to that midfield, which is becoming a very good dilemma for Brendan to have. How do you play it tonight?
I said last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I thought the team against Hearts would be the same team he goes with tonight, barring any sort of injuries or anything. So I'm going to stick by that. I think we're going to go with McGregor, Hatate, and Engels. And that's one thing. It only occurred to me the other day, actually, that in Europe, we always feel smaller and slower and weaker. And, in certain elements of the pitch, that's still the case. Carter Vickers, as much as he's a man mountain for us, I think he's only 6 foot or just over. But, I mean, Bernardo, what a first half he had against Rangers, winning the ball, winning tackles, just a real dig and fight in him that game. Engels as well, very tall player. We've only seen just over, I think, 90 minutes from him. So it's hard to judge how strong he is, but all the analysis shows that he's a box-to-box type of midfielder. Tall, can take set pieces, penalties. So that's another really good acquisition um, to play in European games, to deploy in European matches, because quite often when you come up against these top sides, the players are taller, faster, stronger, and you try and match them in quality. And I think you just lose out in those one-on-one battles all the time. So I think we're looking in a much better place, even just height-wise, going into these European games. And I think you're right. I think there is a confidence. I think you mentioned there that 9th to 24th place. I looked at, there's all these sort of simulations of games I played 10,000 times. What is the average result and stuff like that? So we all know that we need to get about 9 points to get into the top 24. Interestingly, I think you only need 12 or 13 points to finish 16th. And if you finish between 9th and 16th, you're seeded for that playoff round. And the difference in seeding can be quite vast. I mean, I think in the examples I've seen, which obviously will not be the final table, you've got teams like Atletico Madrid finishing 9th and 10th, which you would obviously want to avoid after last season's nightmare. But you've got teams like Sporting Lisbon and Benfica and Monaco and PSV finishing in 15th and 16th, and 20th and 21st. Now, I'm not saying PSV and Benfica would be a walkover, but I fancy as much more in a playoff game against a team like that over an Atletico Madrid or an AC Milan or a Liverpool. So if we do really, really well in our home games, I mean, it's not beyond us to get 12 points out of 12 in those home fixtures. So if we can get 12 to 13 points, not to jump the gun, but I think that would give us a slightly more favourable playoff game should we get there. So I think the format, as we know, probably does suit us more than the old format, and that's why tonight is a must-win game. As you've both said, it's just a must-win game. It's the easiest tie out of the 8. We've got it first. We've got it at home. We're in really good form. So, I think some people fancy us to win comfortably. I think when you look at the quality in the sides, I think we probably should win comfortably. But because it's Celtic in Europe, Celtic in the Champions League, because of the last 10 years, I'll take anyone. A 1-0 will do me fine.
Well, here's a controversial thought for you, and everyone seems to have settled on a couple of variations of this midfield. Here's one variation for you. Bernardo starts, Engels doesn't. Right? And the reason for that, potentially, is that Bernardo is experienced. He's played in these games before. He's proved his worth in these games. And we know what he can do. We know what he can deliver. We want Hatate in there because we need a playmaker. And Hatate was really poor at that at the weekend, to be fair. I think he had one pack pass, which is poor. I was listening to Alan earlier on. But Engels had maybe 5, but he also turned the ball over 5 times in really dangerous areas, which is exactly why we were playing Bernardo last year, to try and stop that sort of thing happening. So Hatate is obviously very liable to do that. So you could argue that what people have been saying about Bernardo and Engels starting is very, very valid, but that's based on the eye test with Engels. I think we were all impressed with him. I certainly was. We've been impressed with him so far, but it seems his stats don't really back up a lot of that. He does have some issues. He's only a young fella now, remember. I would say about Engels is he's not the player that, and I don't think ever will be the type of player, but he's not the quality of player that Matt O'Reilly is now. But in my view, he's better than Matt O'Reilly was when he first came, and the same age and expecting the same development. So, it's, as you say, the makeup of that is going to be. I don't think that's an easy call for the manager. I think in this case, what he'll probably do is start, as we did at the weekend, and I think potentially in future games, it's Hatate that might get dropped, because the athleticism, the counter pressing of Bernardo, the athleticism of Engels, the box to box stuff, and you might not have that creativity in the midfield. But apparently, we didn't really have that creativity in the midfield against Hearts. But what we're looking for is, and why in Brendan's systems, the wingers are always so important, is because that's your outlet. And that's where we are expecting our creativity from. That's why Kuhn's been so important this year. And what Maeda gives us. So, I mean, it's a fascinating debate, to be honest. And the manager's going to have to double down on someone. But I think that in this case, if you can't play your playmaker in this game, then I think you've got a real problem. But I think he might not play his playmaker in the away games that we have, the tough away games that we have. So Borussia, Atalanta, and all the rest of it, because you're just relying on the system, and what you have there is the ability to turn them over, to counter press them, to make them make mistakes. And I think we're physically a much more effective team if we had that midfield. But in this game, it's horses for courses. We have to win these games. It's not a matter of going to Borussia and praying for a point. We have to win these games. I think we have to be brave. And no matter who he starts, at the end of the day, if it's not working out, he doesn't need to wait to 65 minutes to change it. He can change it long before that. And we have that quality on the bench now, which is, absolutely fantastic. And as you said, Paul John, it is a brilliant discussion to be had. It's really such a difference from, which one of the, we're waiting for someone to let us down by not tracking back or something, then we're going to bring on someone that's not even as good, or you've got the near Beatons of the world and you're hanging your hat on them, waiting for some sort of miracle. And it's a very different situation to be in. We're much stronger. I'm just getting anxious and, basically overanalyzing everything. But at the end of the day, we're as strong, as you said, as we've been for many years. I think for many years. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do. I think we had an off day at the weekend, as a matter of fact. Yeah. But I wasn't worried about it. But it was definitely an off day for quite a few players. But we have so much quality in this team compared to the rest of the league that I think anyone is going to struggle to get close to us. And in fact, you made the comment earlier on, Patrick, and I'd been talking to someone about this the other day. When you look at the quality of our league, what do you reckon the chances are? And I think they're quite strong, of another invincible season.
Very strong. I think it's 71 with the bookies now or something, which is probably a worthwhile bet. But I said a few minutes ago, I think it's maybe a stronger team than the Invincibles, and as you've just said, the gap between us and the rest is just streets. As you say, we had an off day at the weekend, and that was a team that finished third last season, and they probably still do. Maybe Aberdeen are up there, but they probably have the third or fourth best squad in the league, and we won fairly comfortably. Rangers obviously don't pose anywhere near a threat by the looks of things either. That squad is rotten, and it's going to stay rotten for at least 6 months, if not a year. So I think it's entirely possible. You can have these one-off games. We've seen it. We've seen it in seasons gone by. Trips to Ibrox, trips to Tynecastle, a refereeing decision or two can heavily influence a game. But I think we're going to be favourites going into every single game we play domestically this season.
Patrick, one of the points John made was to have the option of playing a different kind of style at home. You're looking at the home games, you're hoping to take as much as possible, obviously. And then going away, you've seen teams, even yesterday, taking tankings away from home at this kind of level. And we've been on the brunt end of that. In fact, I remember I mentioned this before. Vladimir Weiss, the manager of Slovan Bratislava, was the manager of Artmedia Bratislava when they pumped us 5-0, albeit not in the Champions League because we didn't get that far. But you look at Bayern Munich, for example, and we've had those hammerings, against PSG, against Barcelona. So John's point, I think, is a very good one in relation to playing a more defensive midfield when necessary, and we've got the options to do that as well.
We do, and that's another ambition this season, I would argue. I know we've got more games, but as I say, the draw's been quite favourable. You've got the Europa League winners, you've got the Champions League finalists, you've obviously got Aston Villa, who won fairly comfortably against another one of our opponents last night. But it sounds a bit tin pot, but to avoid a tanking over the course of the 8 games is an ambition, because it feels as if every time we go into Europe, we suffer some sort of heavy defeat. 5-1 at the Bernabeu, 6-0 last season. 3-0 away to Bayern, a few years ago. Barcelona, several different examples there. And it is a new thing. The last 10 years or so is the only time, as you say, I think Art Media and what's the one from 1991? I can't remember the name.
Neuchâtel Xamax.
Neuchâtel Xamax, that's it. But I mean, apart from those two in our history, this is quite a new phenomenon to get hammered 5, 6, 7-0 away from home. So to avoid that this season, I think John's right. To have a bit more grit in there, to maybe drop Hatate and have both Engels and Bernardo playing. I think that would really benefit us. And obviously, I don't think you can ignore the goalkeeper. I mean, what a signing we've made in Kasper Schmeichel this season. Obviously broke a 118-year-old record at the weekend. If Carter Vickers can stay fit in front of him, and that back four looks pretty settled now. Even Liam Scales has played really, really well the last 3 or 4 games. So I don't think you can underestimate how important that is going into these games, because we all love Joe Hart, and he had a really strong end to last season, really strong end to his career. But the last season or two, he was a bit of a weak link in the team, and he was one of the first places you would think, let's improve upon this position. So I'm hoping that we'll avoid those hammerings this season, and you can sort of progress. And I think tonight's game, that's not one of those games where you need to sit back. This is a game where you really need to have a go. I think Brendan spoke about it in a sit-down interview of some kind a few days ago. They've been through 4 rounds of qualifying. They've played 8 qualifying games to get here. So, one, that will take a toll on them. To get that money into a club of that size, that will be brilliant for them. And I'm not saying they'll be happy to be here, but they will be happy to be here, because what a stage it is for them to have reached, having to go through all those qualifiers. John makes a good point. This will be one of 2 of their easier games out of the 8 fixtures that they've got. But it's a game that we have to win. We really should be ahead of a club like Bratislava, especially playing at home. And
they're the only team.
It's a must-win game. Sorry?
They're the only team that actually qualified through all the rounds from the first round of. They're the only ones that made it through all 4.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they had. They had some fairly sketchy results and got away with a few. But I mean, the fact is, that's even more. Yeah, it was it Napoleon said, "I'd rather have a lucky general." So if they've got luck on their side, we don't necessarily want to be meeting them. I'm not saying that I'm overly anxious, but I'm now ascribing them luck. I'm now saying they're carrying luck with them.
They've used all their luck. That's what it is. They've used up all their luck this season to get here, and now
excellent point.
They're going to hit a bad patch.
You've raised the Kasper Schmeichel discussion as well, Patrick. So let's have a wee chat about him, because as good as Joe Hart was for 3 seasons, and as influential as he was, going into Europe, sometimes he was left wanting. And the point was made the other day that some of the other goalkeepers that preceded him, Arthur Boric, Fraser Forster, for example, won us points at this level. John, Schmeichel's had a perfect start to the season, and it's not just keeping the goals out. I mean, I've loved the way that he's able to distribute the ball, both with throw-ins and at his feet, turning defence into attack. What a signing he's been.
It's sort of miraculous signing, and I certainly admire him, because he seems to be in the first stages of trying to attain the same sort of godlike physique that I have. So he's certainly, he doesn't look anywhere near as athletic as he obviously is. You see him throwing himself about, and you're just like, because when he's standing there, you're like, how is he going to get down into a corner? And but yeah, when you see him play, it's just remarkable, and his distribution is so good. I didn't think, to be honest with you, that was as big an issue as people made out. In terms of Like last year with Joe Hart and stuff like that, you know, Joe's not very good at distribution and all the rest of it. I thought he was perfectly fine. You know, he was grand, you know, all the rest of it. But, you know, when you see someone at that level doing it, you know, it's a weapon. It's not just some sort of, oh, we're getting the ball out and we're recycling possession. He is putting people free and clear on the counter.
Yeah.
And that is something I can't remember seeing in a long time. And he is a dangerous player for us. And his accuracy in the distribution is quite something. I mean, that's remarkable. You're looking at a guy who's perfected, you know, accurate to feet, sort of 50, 60-yard passes and, you know, almost equally long throws. How many people in the world can do that? You know, it's absolutely amazing. And he has made saves that you know, he's one of these, it's like, there's a standard saves you'd expect a Celtic goalkeeper to make. But he's made a couple of saves there that you wouldn't have been surprised if they'd gone in. You know, so I even one at the weekend. So I wouldn't be, you know, surprised to be if he is a key player for us. I certainly hope he's not a key player for us tonight. I hope that we don't see him or hear him mentioned tonight. You know, I hope he has a really relaxing evening. And they don't get any set pieces or anything, and we've just their possession stats, even in those games, even that they won, were like 44%. So I think we're going to have lots of possession, and they'll look to hit us on the counter. So I'm, you know, I think we are experienced. I think no matter what they do, we present them problems, right? Because we are experienced in dealing with stubborn teams. You know, the bus parked in front of the bus, you know, as Hearts did at the weekend. So, you know, we're experienced at that. We know how to combat that. We deal with it all the time. But also, we are devastating on the counter. You know, we have unbelievable pace up front. And if we have the accuracy, you know, if we can take our chances, and if they're trying to play us, and we take our chances, we'll absolutely pummel them. You know, if they come out to try and play football, you know, there's just as good a chance they just, you know, they sit in deep and wait for to try and hit us on the counter. But again, either way, I think we're too good for them. But I don't think it's going to be a big gap. I think it's going to be a tight game. They have a much older team than us, and we can potentially run the legs off them.
Yeah, so let's hope so.
You know, I was hoping the last quarter or so that we can really just run the legs off them. And you know, we just have to be patient, but it's so difficult to be patient when you know what's at stake. You know, because it's, you know, this isn't a one-off game. You know, in terms of, well, it is a one-off game, but you know, in terms of this league, we have to win these games. We have to win the 4 home games. That's it. Anything else is a bonus, and would be a very unexpected bonus. You know, I think that defensively, are we good enough to hold out against the likes of Borussia, Atalanta, you know, Leipzig? I mean, I'm not sure that we are. I mean, it would be a sort of backs to the wall Barcelona type performance back in the day, not the good one that we won, but you know, still, you know, the one that we drew, and backs to the wall in there, and it would be, you know, it would be unlike this team. That's not the way that this team play. That's not the way that it's not the way that we play. You know, I've never seen us dig in like that, and I think there's certainly the possibility of mistakes if we do against much. But you know, I mean, again, Greg Taylor's been probably one of our best players this season, easily been one of our best players. But then you come up against some, you know, massive athletic, you know, the right back on the other side, and you know, or their winger is just some, you know, giant beat that's like 50 million quid or whatever, and then you come up, you know, it becomes a problem. So I don't think that suits us to play that way. You know, I think we need to try and focus on playing our own game and hope that that's good enough. And certainly tonight, I don't think we're going to come up against that quality of player. So we should have more than enough in the tank. And I'm veering wildly from massive optimism to be incredibly anxious. So, yep.
Well, I am slightly more optimistic than yourself, John. I think we will win tonight. I don't know by what scoreline, but I think it is imperative to get the 3 points. And looking at, I've scribbled down the fixtures, and just looking at as you say, Borussia Dortmund, Atalanta, that'll be away from home. That's a struggle. Europa League winner, Champions League finalist. But looking beyond those games, should we win tonight? Talking about the sort of 9 points needed, the 12 points needed. You get Leipzig at home, Bruges at home, Zagreb away, and Young Boys at home.
Yeah.
All you need is 6 points from that to
Yeah.
almost certainly get the top 24. And I really would like to think we'll get the 6 points. I think people are underestimating Leipzig a wee bit. Looking at the 4 home games, thinking we can get 12 points. I don't know. I think Leipzig are a really, really top quality side. Bruges, decent team, but I think we should be winning that at home. Zagreb, after last night, I'd maybe fancy us to get a point or something over there. Because they don't look amazing. Well, I say they don't look amazing. They look right rotten last night, but up against a Celtic team, they'd maybe struggle even at home. And then Young Boys, I think they, despite the scoreline, put in a decent showing against Aston Villa, and maybe unlucky to lose 3-0. But again, at Celtic Park, you need to be picking up 3 points there.
It's the way things fall, though, isn't it? Because if you look at that, right, so first of all, I wasn't expecting us to beat Leipzig at home or not. Although I was at that last Leipzig game, and we threw that away. We absolutely threw it away.
The Ange one 2 years ago.
Yeah, we made it so easy for them. It was really frustrating. It was a really frustrating night, and not a night that I enjoyed. I just thought it was just, we just let them run rampant. It was not good. I don't see this team would do something like that, but still, I still think, I have the battle scars from that, so I still think Leipzig are a very good side. It was a Zagreb game I'm sort of more thinking that we would pick up points from. But the other thing is as well, somebody else pointed out, Villa are last, but if Villa have qualified, or if Villa have already qualified by the time we play them, what standard the team are they going to put out? Given how important the Premiership is for them as well. And if Young Boys are already out of it by the time we play them, which there's a very good chance they will be well out of it, what sort of standard team are they going to put out? So it really depends how many of these guys are still in competition. Because, we've seen a lot of them who have tough leagues will not take this seriously if they have no chance. They'll throw enough guys on the park to try and hopefully get, some sort of result because you get paid. They obviously want the money, and you get paid per point. So, they're going to get, their chairman's going to be pushing them to try and make a few quid. But at the end of the day, it's going to really just depend for the players, because the chairman doesn't play. So the players need to be motivated. And if the players are like, this is a waste of time, and we're just going to get pumped here and we're out of this competition, they've completely deflated, then it gives us a massive opportunity. But then again, we still need to be in it as well.
They'll have that in the back of their minds, won't they? They're first team players. But I've got no stats or analysis to back this up. But I feel as if teams in the English Premier League who make that jump into Europe, like Aston Villa have done this season, they do struggle with squad depth. They do struggle to compete on both those stages. So if Aston Villa have qualified, as you say, they might struggle in the league, and then by that stage, by the time we play them, they might, as you say, rest a few players, put more emphasis on the league. I mean, I'm just looking at the fixtures. They've got West Ham at home 4 days before that game, and then they travel to Wolves only 2 or 3 days afterwards. So, and I don't think we don't get a winter break anymore either, but I don't think they get a winter break in England. So,
and those are teams that they have to beat.
If they want to stay in that
games for them, they have to win those games. It's not like they're going to Arsenal or something and expecting to get pumped. They have to win those games. So again, there's so many possible permutations and things that affect teams. It's impossible to know how it's going to go, and we just focus on ourselves. But again, I don't think there's any reason, despite my anxiousness, to be less excited than we were when this draw was made. I think we have a team that can compete. Now, what does that mean? Is it going to mean? I mean, I don't think we'll lose a game tonight. I'd be astonished if we lost a game tonight. But there's a good possibility it might be a draw. Both they're coming hard and fast at it, and we're nervous because we know what's at stake. A couple of boys have an off night. You don't know, but I think our guys are going to be well up for it. A Champions League night, Celtic Park, the music comes on, and the crowd are going nuts. And I think Slovan Bratislava and their players are going to get a rude awakening, and not just from the crowd, but from the I mean, did you watch the documentary thing they did inside the huddle?
That was.
I've only seen the clip so far, John. I've not watched the entire documentary yet.
I watched it last night, and it was just that's what they were talking about: the intensity, the fast start. Again, intensity, big energy. Get that starting, and we've been awful good at that. We weren't as good at it last year, but the manager's been absolutely hammering that into them for a year, and so this year we've been fantastic at it. The number of early goals we've had has just been wild. So, obviously, it's really, dependent on circumstances. But I mean, really, I think it's it's getting through to the players, and that's exactly what we need tonight. We need the intensity, we need the big energy, we need the passion. And I don't even like saying passion because it's not, that's more of a feelings thing. You're talking about an actual playing issue. We need the discipline that he kept talking about. So we need to be disciplined. We need to do the jobs that we're supposed to do. We need to be counter pressing. We need to do all of these things. If we lose the ball, we need to get back. All of that requires a discipline, and we need that intensity going forward and accuracy, because we are prone to creating, because we get away with it in our league, we are prone to creating a lot of chances and not scoring nearly as many of them as we should be. So we'll see what happens tonight, but
more clinical. John, I'll tell you something. Over the last few weeks, I've been recording This Is Acsom, and you guys have been running this kind of solo. And there's an air of positivity about you, John Hughes. What's been going on in the last few weeks that's changed your view? I'm liking it.
No, it's just because we've been on with new hosts, and I'm trying not.
No,
you've cut them off.
I'm liking it. Yeah, well, I'll tell you something. It makes a change from me getting cut off. Chill Paul comes in to say this game is winnable for us, but it will be closer than we think. Who's the snitch? PJ just answered his pager. I'm running my stream off my pager by the looks of it, mate. So thank you, everybody, for sticking with us when things go wrong technically. Hopefully, it is a temporary thing. I had to double check that Patrick was blinking there, that he was actually still with me. Stevie boy, Paul the part-timer using the old internet's down excuse he's learning. You know, Stevie, as well as I do, I'm from Fife. We're a wee bit of a backwater, and from time to time, the Wi-Fi plays up. So apologies for that. And when I freeze, Patrick and John run with it, which is what Patrick and I are doing now that John's taking a wee bit of time out. There's nothing wrong with that. We're passing the baton. Now, before John comes back in, I want to tell a wee story, Patrick, right? I love the fact that, we put things out there and people come back and say, you're wrong. This is what happened, right? And it's all about just, taking a delve into the history books. And we've told a story quite a few times over the years about Chris Morris. Now, I'm going to link all this in. We heard the very, very sad news that Toto Schillaci had passed away. Toto Schillaci, Salvatore Schillaci, of course, was the Juventus striker who lit up Italia 90 for Italy. He was a top scorer in that tournament. He wasn't a first choice either for Italy. But they knocked out Ireland. It was an Ireland side I had fallen in love with in 1988 during the European Championships. Jack Charlton at the helm. John, you'll remember it. Great, brilliant side. He would find some kind of reason to play a player. Cascarino lied that he had Irish heritage to get a game. Ended up the top goal scorer for Ireland. Chris Morris was from Cornwall, I think it was. His mum and dad ran a Bridie place, which is still in operation. Anyway, Chris Morris This is where I'm going with this. He claimed that when he was on international duty, he was introduced to the fields of Athenry from none other than Niall Quinn, who's a big Celtic fan, and he was interested in the fact that Chris used to go to all these CSC nights and sing a Celtic song. Peter Grant told him, you don't need to know the words, just start singing Hail, Hail, and everybody will join in. Niall Quinn gave him a tape, says that's the fields, go and learn it, sing it at the CSCs, and lo and behold, the myth was created that Chris Morris introduced the Fields of Athenry into the lexicon of Celtic songs. It comes back to Hampden, and of course, the Celtic fans are singing it, and people are saying to him, you started this, Chris, at the CSCs. Well, I've received an email, John. I've received an email with further information in relation to this, right? We've got the Fields of Athenry there from Cheryl, who lives in Athenry, and we've got Neely Mockin's book here. Now, this is all linked, right? So when I was writing that Neely Mockin book, I obviously got to know young Neely really well. His older brother is John. And John emailed me to say, listen, Paul, I've heard your story about Chris Morris a few times. I'm not sure it's accurate. So here we go. This is a cracker, gentlemen. Please, I hope that my pager does not knock off the Wi-Fi at some stage here, right? So we've been told about the Chris Morris story. At the end of the 1983-84 season, says John, Larbert Supporters Club had a dance, and it was in a place called the Plough Hotel in Stenhousemuir. See, the attention to detail in this story is sensational, right? So the special guest was none other than your old man's old teammate who also played against Bratislava the last time, Jimmy Johnston. So Jimmy Johnston was the special guest, and anybody that got to know Jimmy knew that Jimmy fancied himself as a bit of a singer, right? Now, the band on the night, check this out for detail, were called Bus Stop, right? And they were ran by an individual called Eamon Toland. See, when people know so much specialist information, you tend to believe the story, right? Anyway, the crowd were asked to be quiet, and wee Jinky took to the stage, picks up the mic, and he sings a song that wasn't familiar to the crowd, called The Fields of Athenry. Apparently, in 1982, it had been a hit in Ireland for Paddy Riley. It was the first time John Mockin had heard it. And the chances are, because Jimmy was in and out at Celtic Park right up until the centenary season, that the song had been sang at Celtic Park prior to Chris Morris introducing it to the squad. Now, this is one of the most important bits. The band were eventually told to stop playing Celtic songs because the women wanted to do the slosh. But this whole point of the story is that the Fields of Athenry was sang by Jimmy Johnston in 1984 at a CSC, quite a few years before Chris Morris. John, we're learning every day. Every day is a school day.
Is it not the case, Paul John, that the police say when the story's overly detailed, that is indicating lies?
Yeah, potentially, yes, because you've embellished it and every detail has to be right. No, you're right. So there you go.
Can I tell you two stories off the back of it, or just one very quick one? Things I mentioned, that England-Ireland game that year, I was at a wedding, Big Sean Corrigan, Corrigan's Fishmongers in Glasgow, a lot of people will know. And it was down at Sea Mill, and there was about 600 people there. And but when they went to do the first dance, it was terrible. Actually, I think about it now. The poor bride, Kathleen, sitting there, and the whole place had emptied, absolutely emptied, because everyone was upstairs in their rooms watching England-Ireland. So they had to send 3 search parties round trying to find Sean, trying to find what room he was in so he could come down and do the first dance with his new bride, who at that point was not amused. So, and Sean was like, right, come on, lads, we need to go down and I've got this first dance to do. And everyone was like, oh, no, you can go, mate, that's fine. You go on, we'll stay where we are, thanks very much. So I think they had a crowd of about 10 women out of the 600 people that were there to watch them do the first dance.
These are the things, John, you've reminded me, right? Yeah. Tonight we're playing in Europe. 10 years ago, we played in Europe, and I always remember the game because it was the day I got married. 10 years ago today, and Celtic played Salzburg, and we drew 2 each. So you've actually just reminded me. But I did buy a card and all that, John, so I'm all right. I'm safe. I'm good.
Can I do a wee shout out to a fella So basically, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll have seen this story, but I just wanted to do him a shout out because it was so nice of him. So the Irish Open was on here, and the reason I'm sitting in this hostage video situation is because I'm in a caravan. So we have a place down at Murlock Beach. So and the Royal County Down is literally in our back garden here. So we thought we'd nip into Royal County Down for the after the pro-am, see if we could see any famous people. Now, there's security everywhere, all the yellow jacket stewards, because the parking had been taken over and we weren't sure if you were allowed to be in anyway. So we walked in the front door and there was very, very well-dressed doorman there. And we just blagged it, walked straight through to the bar. And, Keith Gillespie was in the bar and Paul McGinley and, all this sort of stuff. But before I'd even get sat down, the doorman comes up behind us and we both thought, me and myself and the missus both thought straight away, this is us getting punted. And he says, "Are you John Hughes?" And I was like, "Yeah." Why? I was thinking, have I got outstanding warrants or something? So he says, "Are you John Hughes?" Said, "My name's Michael." He said, "I'm a massive fan of Acsom. I watch it every day." And he starts shaking my hand. And all I was thinking was, basically all the people in that, all the famous people sitting in that room thinking, who the feck is John Hughes? As he's standing shaking my hand. So Michael, thank you very much, mate. You made our day. It was very, very funny. I'm still laughing about it. And he did want to pass on all his thanks to all the other contributors in Acsom and all the people that comment as well. Anyway, just it was just a wee diversion story. Sorry about
Brilliant.
that.
No, that's brilliant, John. I absolutely love hearing that. I really do. And thanks for sharing all these stories, because when people get in touch with us, they might be able to tune in every day now and again. It might come into one of the live events. The support has been sensational. We're 1,000 live here on a Wednesday afternoon, 1,000 people tuning in to get involved in Celtic discussion. We've got a massive big game tonight. We're talking historical games against the same team and where we are in the here and now. But there was a point made by John earlier about the distribution ability of Kasper Schmeichel. What I like about it, Patrick, is the fact that if you look at a heat map of who he's actually passing the ball to, he's definitely doing it more offensively. So Joe Hart, there was a lot of passing between the fullbacks and particularly the centre halves, but it was happening in our final third, our defensive third of the park. The way that Schmeichel's changed that dynamic is he's finding, there was an occasion where he finds Maeda. I think that was with the throw out. He's finding him on about the halfway line. And then when he got Greg Taylor with a great pass, I think he was over the halfway line. So he's definitely turning it. He's turning the balance and he's doing it very, very quickly. And I think in Europe, that could be key.
I think it could, especially with Maeda and Kuhn. Kyogo as well, obviously. Harder to go through the middle, I think. But the pace that they have to get in behind, as John said, if they come out and try and play football, our ability to get in behind, we showed it in pre-season. We showed it with, the offside goal against Rangers. It's frightening when it all clicks together and we can sort of break through. That clip that was posted on Twitter about Maeda, it's gutting because Maeda loses the ball immediately. He's immediately shoved off the ball, and it eventually comes to nothing. But he's effectively one-on-one with I don't know if it's their right centre back or their right back or something, but it's an incredible throw. It sort of spins round one of the Hearts players to get to Maeda in the halfway line, as you say. And I think it was Hibs in the Cup about a month ago. He plays this ball right to the middle and Hatate just about gets a touch on it. I think he plays it out to Kuhn just in the edge of the box, and I think Kuhn fails to control it. But you're going from literally your own 18-yard box to their 18-yard box in a matter of seconds, because we're set up right, we're set up to go forward, and then you've got a goalkeeper like that who, I don't think Joe Hart 90% of the time, certainly domestically, I don't think it was a problem. His distribution, it maybe just wasn't as ambitious as what we and what Brendan might want. And with Kasper, he's willing to take those risks. He's willing to play right through the middle, get up the park quickly, and try and hit them on the counter. And I think that could well be an asset tonight. And against other teams where games might be slightly more competitive. Leipzig at home, Bruges at home, maybe Zagreb away. These games will be sort of nip and tuck, I would think. And obviously not conceded a goal in the league. only conceded that sort of one goal from the set piece at the free kick that Hibs had in the cup. So we're looking strong defensively. We're looking good going forward, and despite all of our nerves, we've got reasons to be hopeful going forward tonight. It's just our previous 10, 11 years in this competition that's making us all a bit nervous.
We're in that kind of state of mind, I guess, where you get confident and you're starting to feel good about it, but then something draws you back, and it is basically the memory of previous incidents and defeats, etc., where you built yourself up. But I want to briefly touch on this, not in a negative sense, John, but obviously the financial results were released, and sometimes what I find really interesting about it is a chairman's statement when that happens. Obviously, we're in rude health. We knew that. There's a lot more money coming in. We've spent a fair bit of money since these results were accumulated and calculated. But there was a couple of wee bits, and I might be looking too much into this. I might be splitting hairs with the wording of this, but I felt it was interesting. And actually, it was pointed out by Patrick about 4 weeks ago, whereby we're only participating rather than competing in the Champions League. And that was the actual wording used by Peter Lawwell. So first of all, John, do you think I'm looking too much into that? Am I being too hypercritical? Or do you think there are aspirations within the boardroom at Celtic to do something at this level?
I think it's the first thing that I saw that I paid attention to. So no, I think if you're paying any attention at all, it's the first thing you pick up. There's a couple of reasons for that, and it's really because it smacks of the Lawwell mindset. Lawwell's writing it, so obviously it's his mindset, but regular European participants, and you're like, oh, well done, mate. It's like, it really feels, as I said, I think it feels like you're the sort of wee fat kid with one leg and no crutches running the 100-metre sprint, and you get a pat in the head for participating, and that's basically what this is. It's like, oh, aren't we great? But as I say, I also said, without any irony at all, Peter Lawwell would take that certificate and pin it to the fridge in the hospitality with a Lisbon Lions magnet. Do you know what I mean? And so, no, I think I'm glad he's not making the decisions. I'm glad he's no longer making the decisions, because you can be absolutely sure that we wouldn't have seen Ida or we wouldn't have seen Engels. Absolutely, almost 100% positive that neither of those things would have happened. So, the chairman, why would he change his attitude? It's the same attitude he's had forever. And everything else he wrote on that was just you repeating that story about Dermot Desmond getting asked by a journalist, how many cups have we won? Because all he's doing is rhyming off cups, domestic trophies, and you're like, that's brilliant, mate. That's brilliant. But the thing about that is, you've set a higher standard. We've won all of those, and we continue to win all of them, and we're going to continue to win all of them. So a higher standard has been set. So you cannot just, as Peter Lawwell did, that drove us nuts for years, just kept resetting to zero, selling good players, buying their replacements for peanuts, never making any progress, couldn't care less. And there was clearly, based on what the director said, comments they were making, they had no ambitions for Europe at all, none. The attitude was, oh, well, how can we compete? Well, how you can compete is making a start. The same way you start doing everything, you make a start. You don't just throw your hands up and give up. But if you're happy with a participation trophy, then fair enough. You'll think Peter Lawwell's the very, very man to meet with the European ambitions of the fans, but I don't think so. I'm glad that Brendan is there now pushing Michael Nicholson, and I think Dermot Desmond actually, Michael, who I was talking about earlier, the doorman at the Sleaford Honor, Dermot Desmond actually gave him a big tip that morning because he was playing in the Pro-Am, and Dermot Desmond was saying about the manager wants a particular quality of player. So the fans getting frustrated with the lack of activity, and it's very much the manager wants a particular quality of player, and that's what we've learned. And what we've learned now is that they're going to give him that if the financials stay the same. So The financials are fantastic, but we want that money deployed on the pitch. You know, we want the majority of that money deployed on the pitch where it is. We've broken the transfer window twice and still didn't spend any money. Do you know what I mean? In terms of a net spend. So, you know, how much did we make? About 10, 20, 10, 15 million maybe on that window. We spent 30, made 40, you know, so we still haven't got a net spend. So, you know, we're breaking our transfer windows, breaking the transfer record twice, and we still haven't actually spent any money out of a, you know, 100 million odd reserves that we currently have. So, yeah, I don't think you're reading too much into it. I think it just smacks of Lawwell's attitude, which hasn't changed, but fortunately, he is not calling the shots.
And the big thing for me on the back of all that, John, which I do agree with, is we do have a strong-minded manager, Patrick. And sometimes you think to yourself, well, if you're the manager of Celtic, you need to be. But, you know, I think Ange was in the same mould. And then if you look at the other two managers we've had within, you know, since 2012, Neil Lennon and Ronnie Dyler were far more likely to go with the flow when it came to player recruitment, investment, etc. Whereas you just get the sense Brendan Rodgers is not willing to accept that, is he? That's the reason he came back. He was given a certain amount of promises with regards to the quality of signing, and he's got what he wants. And we've got a squad that's been trimmed, and some of the guys that have left, you know, Wata, I've seen that goal the other night that he scored. Listen, it's a third tier of English football. I'm glad the guy's getting game time. He was a quality player, but he was never going to be that player for Celtic. He was never going to hold down a consistent first team jersey. So Rodgers has come in. He's made some kind of ruthless decisions, I think, and he's got the squad that he wants. The frustration for me will be, of course, if we do really, really well and it's all the fine margins, Patrick, and you think to yourself, we could have done that wee bit more. You know, because the one area of the park at the minute that I think could and should have been strengthened was on the wing. Now, I'm happy with the starting wingers, but once you drop down to, for example, Palma, I think there's a real drop down in quality because, you know, it's not the same kind of situation last season where Palma had a bit of a bounce going into the Champions League and he did pretty well in the Champions League. He's not really kicked on since then, and he's not done anything this season. So I think we start with Kuhn on the right and Mead on the left. I'm confident that Forrest can come in and do a 30, 40-minute cameo. But beyond that, I don't think we've got the depth on the wings. So that could be a frustration if we get just about there and not quite, that we've held back that wee bit, Patrick.
Yeah, I think that probably is a frustration. As you say, I'm quite happy with what we've got starting 11. You know, I've seen a few murmurings online that their right backs, you know, by far and away their best player. So to have Maid on the left and keeping him busy. You know, Brendan talks about respecting that 30% when they're on the ball. We need to work really, really hard to make sure that they can't hurt us. So, you know, Maeda will hopefully, you know, deal with that on his own with any luck. And then Kuhn, you know, me and John have said before, we were always behind Kuhn. We've always rated him as a player. Not once did we doubt him or his abilities.
Doubted it.
And this season we've been justified, haven't we, John? In just how good he's played.
Well done,
he
guys.
looks really, really, he looks really strong, really good in the ball, and me and John will take all the credit for that. And no, but just to go back to the report, it was one of the first things. I mean, that came out on a Monday, and I only really had a quick glance at the figures on the Monday, but then I sort of read the statement yesterday from Nicholson and Lawwell, and it really is the first thing that jumps out at you, that participation word, which, to be fair, the last 10 years has actually been accurate. We have only participated, we've not competed, and it's a difference of where we want to go. You know, you hear Ian Bankier, probably Brian Wilson, Willie Hawley, even though he's not on the board, and obviously Peter Lawwell. You know, participation seems good enough for these people, whereas us fans, you know, we've won treble after treble. The natural next stepping stone is to compete in Europe, which is, you know, for me, I long for these things because I've actually never experienced it. I mean, you two will both remember Martin O'Neill's team and the Gordon Strachan games and stuff like that, and it's something that just is not in my memory at all. I have yet to see that from my Celtic side. So going forward, that has to be the goal. That has to be the ambition. I think the format helps that. And it was a stickler in that sort of comment that he made. I seen another thing. It was Kieran Maguire of Price of Football. He does an analysis of clubs' financial sort of operations, and he'd highlighted a comment. It was about Purchase of property, plant and equipment of 7.1 million, which was up from 1.7 the previous year. So I don't know if that's the money we spent in Barrowfield or the renovation of the sort of the away supporters section for certain away fans. So it's interesting that we're spending. We spent sort of up until the 30th of June, we spent almost 7 million on presumably Barrowfield. And obviously healthy profit, healthy turnover. Operating is up a bit with the wages and stuff, but that'll be bonuses and Champions League wages and stuff. So, you've got to give credit to Peter Lawwell and others on how they've run the club. You often get people saying we're the best run club in Britain, if not Europe, just the amount of money that we have. But our frustration from a footballing aspect, and I think it's totally justified, is we need to use it to kick on. There's no use having it just sitting there. We need to now push on. The future's in Europe. Our ambition and everything we want is to compete in Europe. So I think this is now the time to kick on. And I think this season, everything crossed, this will be the season that we do kick on and get those 9 points.
I'm loving the positivity today, guys. Absolutely brilliant. There's one thing I really want to point out, and it comes in from Celtic Girl on the YouTube. Can all of us going tonight remember the 23rd minute applause for John Burns tragically died making it home from the Hearts game on Saturday? No one should not make it home safe from a match. Yes, I think we've all seen the news. I mean, the heartache that the family and friends are going through at the moment is unthinkable. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. And yes, if you are able to contribute to that, I'm sure it will mean a lot to everybody that knew John as well. Thanks also to Robbie. €5 ties under them already, Slovan Bratislava. They won't fear us. I think, you know what, there's going to be a mutual respect in every single fixture at this level. We all know that people can do damage, and sometimes it's the ones that you don't expect to do it as well. But I am going to ask you guys, 1,000 strong right now, by the way. I could talk on, but I know that, John, by the way, Kevin Graham was serenading you earlier on. Caravan of Love. There you go. House Martins. Thanks for the contribution, Kev. I want a prediction from you. I'm going to start with yourself, John. How do you think it will go tonight?
I think it will be tight enough. But I think it will be 1-0, but I'm going to try and be optimistic and say I think we're going to win 2-0.
I'm going to go with that. I'll go with 2-0. And you know what? Your prediction, guys, of Kuhn being a superstar, he'll get on the score sheet, right? Patrick, what about yourself?
Oh, this could come back to bite me. I really hope it doesn't, but I'm going to go for 3-0.
Wow.
I slightly more confident, slightly more optimistic, but I think Kyogo will score. To add to your sort of Kuhn prediction, I think Kyogo will score, and I think we will make an early start, as Brendan said. So I'll go for 3-0.
I love the positivity. Hopefully that will continue into the game tonight, and we can be happy tomorrow talking about it. We will be covering the game, Chris and I, half an hour before the kickoff. So we'll see you at 7:30 tonight. Massive thank you to everybody for getting involved and sticking with us with the old bad Fife Wi-Fi. Give us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We're heading towards that magical figure of 30,000. We could almost half fill Celtic Park with the subscribers. So thank you all for your support. And if you want to come and see us with Gordon Strachan and John Hartson on the stage, there are some tickets below, but they're going very, very quick. Fewer than 90 left. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Thank you to Patrick McGill and John Hughes for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.